This Bernie Sanders guy might be serious.
He really is.
I think it's the hair.
Quick! Somebody, get me Donald Trump.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Nerdening. I'm Ollamh,
I'm Outlander.
and today we're going to be talking about monsters. In case you hadn't guessed.
Yeah. Oh, man. Favorite movie favorite monsters. It doesn't have to be movie monsters necessarily, but just favorite monsters. There's a lot to choose from out there that have scared us or thrilled us or intrigued us. Where did it come from? Is it intelligent? What's it want?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of different monsters out there. I mean, most of my favorites tend to be more the classics. The Dracula, the vampires, the Wolfman, the Mummy.
That's where monsters began.
Yeah.
Well,
As far as movies, that's really where the idea of doing monsters in movies really came about in about the early 30s. It seems like every culture has the idea of dragon. A lot of them also have vampires.
Yeah, I think the first vampire technically was Lilith, which, if you go back far enough, was Adam's first wife, depending on what you read, was Adam's first wife that wanted to be treated as an equal by Adam. Adam complained to God, so God cast her out.
Yeah.
And that's why he used a rib from Adam to create his subservient wife. And Lilith went on to become the eater of babies or whatever.
Now they are coming up with newer monsters every day. I mean, particularly with the internet's idea of creepypastas. You have this, Slender Man. You have all these horror type ideas, and all these monsters really popping up that are getting developed really quickly.
Okay, so for example, there was a really cool Korean movie, South Korean, obviously, movie called The Host.
Okay.
And it was a monster of unknown origin, of unknown anything. And I really couldn't even describe it other than like a three-legged monster salad. It looked kind of like they just threw everything in there, almost.
Okay.
Like the monster himself, wow, it was like there was just arms sticking off of it at weird angles, like human arms and things like that. But as a creature, the way it worked, the way it moved, and the way it stalked, and all of those things made it its own real, genuine character. And it was just crazy how cool it was.
Sounds kind of like the strangeness that was the Cloverfield monster.
Oh, man. It was a fun monster.
It was. It was a great and fun monster, but it's one of those things where nobody really knows a lot about it. And one of the things that was technically part of the movie that a lot of people didn't get was the fact that the monster was a baby.
Yeah, and I feel like that was almost a failure of the way that they filmed it. They were trying to do the live action found footage thing, and that worked out really well.
Yeah.
And so when we heard after the fact that it was a baby of some sort, I was like, I didn't get that anywhere in the movie.
That was...
It's a humongous thing, okay, but at no point in time did anybody say we understand enough about this creature to say...
Well, that's part of the thing with the movie itself is nobody understood anything about it.
They were all just running.
Yeah.
Shaky cam.
Yeah, I mean, at no point did you really get any information from the government. It was all, just regular people. So, of course, they're not going to know that even if the government found out that, hey, this is just a youngling, the people filming, the people that are holding the camera really aren't going to know that.
Mm-hmm. Interesting point about the movie. Apparently, at the end of the movie, so the end of the found footage, they go back to that fair that they were at, and they were riding the Ferris wheel or whatever, and something splashes down in the water. Apparently, that was actually like a cellular satellite that fell from space and hit the water at that time.
Yeah,
And they just happened to catch it on film and used it in the movie.
And they actually kind of go a bit further as far as putting that in the movie specifically for this is the baby alien actually landing on Earth.
Yeah. By whatever mechanism he got here, he or she.
Yeah, we have no idea as far as gender, if there even is a gender.
Yeah.
It may produce asexually, which would really be bad for us because that means it's just going to keep spawning.
Yeah, but I love how J.J. Abrams was trying to do, you listen to him in the the interviews and that, and he was talking about he wanted to make an American kaiju film.
Yeah.
He wanted to make an American Godzilla sort of film. You know, it wasn't Godzilla Goes to New York, it's something else. I think he did a great job of it. There's a lot of people that don't like the shaky cam found footage sort of stuff just because it makes them nauseous, and I get that.
Yeah, that's understandable.
Like, it doesn't bother me, but, I understand. Sometimes it is just too much, like the first Hunger Games movie.
Yeah, it's the idea, I think more than anything, it's the idea that everything's moving around, but you're not feeling the motion. Therefore, that disconnect can really mess with the person's head. Now, interestingly enough, you mentioned the kaiju movies, and going from Godzilla to Godzilla, one of the oldest, most
He was the first kaiju.
Yeah.
Godzilla was the first kaiju.
But they haven't actually officially made a connection between Godzilla and Pacific Rim.
No, and here's the thing, Guillermo. Okay.
That's kind of going back to last week with the fan theories that Godzilla is a kaiju.
So Guillermo del Toro, when he was talking about making Pacific Rim, he wanted to make an homage to kaiju films. So all of those movies we saw come out of Japan and all the other wannabes that came out of other countries. There was a cool Russian one that came out a few years back. There's all kinds of kaiju monster films. And the kaiju that they actually used, that they made for that movie, were all supposed to be if you watch the movie, you see that they have individual traits, like the crab kaiju, or the stalker kaiju, or the shark kaiju.
Right. Everybody is
and that was intentional.
Okay.
That was intentional. To try to make basic monsters, but get a whole spectrum of them in there.
Right. So basically, they're saying you really can get anything. It's kind of a lucky dip as far as which monster you get.
Yeah, until they explain in the movie that they're becoming more and more powerful kaiju coming through. But
it's kind of interesting that they change that. Getting more powerful is one thing, but changing from one type of Terran creature as the base from one to another.
Almost like they're pulling genetic material back.
Yeah, exactly. They're kind
I
of
never
grabbing,
thought about that.
They're kind of saying, okay, well, this didn't work, so let's get rid of that. Let's and whatever they happen to get a hold of, that's what they basically develop into the next monster.
A really quick fun nod that they had in the movie. There's one of the kaijus you see very briefly, like the one that hit Peru or whatever. That one was called Karloff. The designers named it Karloff.
Nice.
It had like a flat top skull. And it was like a giant evil Groot.
Nice.
And they named it Karloff. All right, so we've been talking about monsters that we really enjoyed and everything. And what was your favorite monster?
I think for my favorite monster, I'm actually going to have to go with one of the classics, and that is Frankenstein's monster. Mostly because of the fact that it is such a rich story in the novel itself. Mary Shelley had it. It was flexible. It was able to walk normally. It was super intelligent and super strong. But it looked horrible because it had this it was described as having like this waxy yellow skin that was pulled tight over the muscles.
Like it was partly tanned.
Like it was almost like it was a human body that instead of skin had snot over it. And think about it, it's just that you can see the muscles and veins and everything because it was
Do you
The
remember
skin
the
was so
aliens from the
tight.
first X-Files movie?
Yeah.
Kind of like that. Or like the way the bodies in the show turned. Anyway.
But, and then if you take it to the 1931 James Whale's Boris Karloff film, that they kind of changed it almost into the creature was really almost autistic.
Yeah.
Because it had there's one famous scene where everybody says this is proof that, that the serial killer's brain, influenced the monster when he kills this girl. But before that happens, they're throwing daisies into the river and watching them float. So, in the creature's rather simplistic mind, he says, hey, we're throwing pretty things into the river, pretty things float. The girl is pretty, therefore the girl should float. It's a very simplistic thought process, and I think that's one of the really big things with that is the monster is always misunderstood. And he just wants to belong. He just wants to be
Which is
part of society.
Which makes the monster a good analogy for anybody just trying to understand who they are in the world.
Exactly.
So, and I think that's probably one of the lasting legacies of that particular story. My favorite monster, an obvious pick for me, would be the xenomorphs from the Alien series developed by H.R. Geiger. Sorry. I don't even know what's the proper way to say his name. But anyway, that's almost too obvious. There is another monster that I love equally, if not more, for all the same reasons. Because of his originality, because of the way that it was pulled off in the movie and everything else, and that was the Cathoga from a movie called The Relic that came out in the 90s. Michael Madsen was in it. But this was a giant monster beast thing that stood up. It was the size of like a large, well, let's say it was like a liger. It was slightly larger than a liger, the lion-tiger hybrid thing.
Right.
But it was an amalgamation of like boar and lizard and other mammal and spider, and lived off of the hypothalamus part of the human brain.
Eesh.
That's what the giant pinchers on its face were for, was for removing that from the skull.
Ew.
And in the story, this thing gets loose in a museum. If you read the book was really cool. And the book takes place in the Smithsonian in New York. And then they're in the book, they're able to incorporate all of the Rockefeller underground elevators and subways and all of that jazz. And that was a really cool story. But in the movie it was in Chicago.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was in the Chicago Museum. And so it was fun to see. It was the first time for me as a kid seeing, like, in a film setting, the background of what a museum does and everything else, and the way researchers work and all that jazz. And having read the story and then watching the movie, what you don't get from the movie is that monster was actually once human. He was a researcher in a jungle that just drank from the wrong cup.
Okay, now the original monsters, the original origins of the monster was it was actually a protector, wasn't it?
This researcher found a tribe that was kind of pseudo-Mayan in the way that they dealt with people and life and death and everything. So they would have somebody drink this drink to then go and hunt their enemies.
Okay.
And they would turn into their monster/protector.
Okay.
Something so terrible that nobody's going to come to this part of the jungle.
Yeah, I could see that.
And I don't know, I can't recall exactly how he didn't end up attacking the villagers, but...
So, again, it's one of those, really a monster that's misunderstood.
Mm-hmm.
Because it should, it's not something that's, just there to kill anything and everything. It's actually a protector. It's actually there to safeguard that village. It's somebody who sacrifices themselves for the greater good.
Take them out of that context, put them in a completely different environment with somewhat diminished capabilities. And, of course he's going to run around while he's flaming, while he's on fire, killing things.
Also, you make it it's an accident. It's not somebody who's sacrificing themselves. It's somebody who, it's an accident. It's somebody who doesn't know what's going to happen, so...
Seriously, worst trip ever.
So that's some of our favorite monsters, and
Just
ones
some.
that, yeah, again, as with any of the topics that we cover, we could go on about this for hours.
In fact, we do. You're only getting a small slice.
Yeah, that was actually originally how we came up with this. The idea for this show was we would have these hour-long talks, and it's like we should be recording this.
We still often do. You're still only getting a slice.
Yeah, very small portion. But anyway, what are some of your favorite monsters? What are ones that, if you had to make a top 10 list of the best monsters ever, what would you pick?
And go ahead and, if you don't have, or you don't want to give us all your monsters, because you're weird like that, go ahead and give us a suggestion for something else you'd like us to talk about. Something you think that we might be able to contribute on that would entertain you.
And, as always, thank you very much for watching, and stay tuned for more from Ollamh Productions, and
The American Machine.
we'll see you later.